Hey guys, sorry I didn't upload a chapter last night. I was very tired in the evening. So we are on chapter 4 of the Magic Treehouse series, book 1, Dinosaurs Before Dark by Mary Pope Osborne. This chapter is called Henry, and I might just read 2 chapters since I missed a chapter last night. Jack gasped as Annie reached out her hand toward the pteranodon. Oh no, he thought. Annie was always trying to make friends with animals, but this was going too far. Don't get too close to him, Annie, Jack shouted. Annie touched the pteranodon's crest. She stroked his neck. She was talking to him. What in the world is she saying? Jack worried. He took a deep breath. Okay, he would go down too. It would be good to examine a pteranodon. He could take notes like a scientist. Jack started down the rope ladder, and when he reached the ground, he was only a few feet away from the creature. The pteranodon stared at Jack. His eyes were bright and alert. He's soft, Jack, said Annie. He feels like Henry. Jack snorted. He's no dog, Annie. Feel him, Jack, said Annie. Jack didn't move. Don't think, Jack, just do it, Annie said. Jack stepped forward. He reached out very cautiously. He brushed his hand down the creature's neck. Interesting, Jack thought. A thin layer of fuzz covered the pteranodon's skin. Soft, huh? Said Annie. Jack reached into his backpack and pulled out a pencil and notebook. He wrote, Fuzzy Skin. What are you doing? Asked Annie. Jack, taking notes, said Jack. We're probably the first people in the world ever to see a real live pteranodon. Jack looked at the pteranodon again. The bony crest on top of his head was longer than Jack's arm. I wonder how smart he is, Jack said. Very smart, said Annie. Don't count on it, said Jack. His brain's probably no bigger than a bean. No, he's very smart. I can feel it, said Annie. I'm going to call him Henry. He wrote in his notebook, small brainy, ? Jack looked at the creature again. Maybe he's a mutant, he said. A pteranodon tilted his head. Annie laughed. He's not a mutant, Jack. Well, what's he doing here then? Where is this place, said Jack. Annie leaned close to the pteranodon. Do you know where we are, Henry? She asked. The creature fixed his eyes on Annie. His long jaws were opening and closing like a giant pair of scissors. Are you trying to talk to me, Henry? Annie thought. Forget it, Annie, Jack wrote in his notebook. Mouth like scissors. Did we come to a time long ago, Henry? Asked Annie. Is this a place from long ago? Suddenly Annie gasped. Jack! Jack looked up. Annie was pointing toward the hill. On top stood a huge dinosaur. Chapter 5, Gold in the Grass. Go, said Jack. He threw his notebook into his pack. He pushed Annie toward the rope ladder. Bye, Henry, she said. Go, said Jack. He gave Annie another push. Quit it, she said, but she started up the ladder and Jack scrambled after her. Jack and Annie tumbled into the treehouse. They were panting as they looked out the window at the dinosaur, standing at the hilltop eating flowers off a tree. Oh, man, Jack whispered. We are in a long time ago. The dinosaur looked like a huge rhinoceros with 3 horns instead of 1. It had 2 long horns above its eyes, and another one grew out from its nose. It had a shield-like thing atop of his head. Triceratops, said Jack. Does he eat people? Whispered Annie. I'll look it up. Jack grabbed the dinosaur book and he flipped through the pages. There, said Jack, pointing to the picture of the Triceratops, and he read underneath the picture. The Triceratops lived in a late Cretaceous period. This plant-eating dinosaur weighed over 12,000 pounds. Jack slammed the book shut. Just plants, no meat. Good, said Annie. Let's go see him up close. Are you crazy, said Jack. Don't you want to take notes about him, said Annie. We're probably the first people in the whole entire world to ever see a real, live Triceratops. Jack sighed, and Annie was right. Okay, let's go, he said. Jack shoved the dinosaur book into his backpack. He slung his backpack over his shoulder, and Annie started down the ladder, and Jack followed her. Just promise you won't pet him, Jack said. I promise, said Annie. Promise you won't kiss him, said Jack. I promise, said Annie. Promise you won't talk to him? I promise, said Annie. Promise you won't. Don't worry, said Annie. Jack and Annie stepped off the ladder. The Pteranodon gave them a friendly look, and Annie blew him a kiss. "Be back soon, Henry," she said. "Shh," said Jack, and he led the way slowly and carefully through the ferns. When Jack and Annie reached the bottom of the hill, they knelt behind a bush. Annie started to speak, but Jack quickly put his finger to his lips. And then he and Annie peeked out at the Triceratops. The dinosaur was bigger than a truck. He was eating the flowers off a magnolia tree. Jack slipped the notebook out of his pack, and he wrote, "Eats flowers." Annie nudged him. Jack ignored her. He studied the Triceratops again, and he wrote, "Eats very slowly." Annie nudged him harder. Jack looked at her. Annie pointed to herself. She walked her fingers through the air, and she pointed to the dinosaur, and she smiled. Is she teasing? Jack wondered. Annie waved goodbye to Jack, and Jack started to grab her. She laughed and jumped away, and she fell into the grass in full view of the Triceratops. "Get back!" Jack whispered. Too late, the big dinosaur had spotted Annie. He gazed down at her from the hilltop. Half of a magnolia flower was sticking out of his mouth. "Oops," said Annie. "Get back," Jack said again. "He looks really nice, Jack," Annie said. "Nice? Watch out for his horns, Annie." The Triceratops gazed calmly down at Annie. Then he turned and looked down the side of the hill. "Bye," said Annie, and she turned back to Jack. "See?" Jack grunted, but he wrote in his notebook, "Nice." "Come on, let's look around some more," said Annie. And as Jack started after Annie, he saw something glittering in the tall grass. Jack reached down and picked it up. It was a gold medallion. A letter was engraved on the medallion, a fancy M. Oh man, someone has been here before us, Jack said. So we will listen to chapter 6 on sometime soon. But I hope you enjoyed so far. Bye.